The first question we will like to ask you is about the question of, for example, the universities, as we are in one of them. If you think that as for example journalism now is in crisis, if the way that universities teach journalists is in crisis, as your mate has commented at the end of the speech, that a lot of people in the States don't do any field work before being a real journalist. What do you think about this point?
Well, I mean, it seems that the work that you're doing here at Fabra is very impressive, and it's very hands-on, as they say. It's very practical, and I think that's incredibly important to just do things and make things. I think that there are a lot of creative journalism programs in the United States. I'm very impressed by what Northwestern University in Chicago does, where they have people who are not just journalists but coders also. They know how to do some programming work. I think that's really important to break down some of those barriers between journalism and other fields like computer science and art and other things.
Do you see a lot of difference between different parts or different regions of the United States? As for example, we have talk about Chicago. Like for example, I don't know, New York. I suppose that it will be also a good university. But for example, in the south or more in the west, in parts of California or something like that, there are.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are interesting things in every part of the country. There's a very interesting program at NYU, a graduate program, that it's art and computer science, and the people who come out of there do absolutely fascinating projects, some of which are completely impractical but just open up your mind. We just hired a data visualization specialist. You know data visualization with interactive, using data to display it, yeah. And his thesis was about how to make somebody who was blindfolded think they were in a rowboat using computers, so he had a very sort of artistic view, but he was thinking about how you see the world and how technology affects it. And in Miami, a guy named Alberto Cairo, who I think is actually a Spaniard, has a wonderful program of interactive graphics and video at the University of Miami. So I think they're beginning to be a response to the change in media.
Do you think that, for example, as you have said, that journalists and this type of career, more creative, needs something more open and more open mind in terms, not, for example, here in Europe we have program of Bologna that have restricted a lot the autonomy of the universities in terms of doing itself programs or activities. Do you think that journalists have to go in that way, or more open mind, more sell every student trying to do something new and something singular?
Yeah, but it's a little bit of a problem, because if you're a professor of journalism, you're probably not a journalist at the same time, so you miss everything that comes that's new. I mean, it seems like some of your professors are working at La Bancaria or other places, so they have the experience of the real world. I think that's important, But professors are only half the story, and the administration is only half the story. It's really the students who can make things happen, who can do things on their own, who can challenge the orthodoxy.
Well, you were talking about the way that the students we see the world, and that made me think about what have Area said, that we should not tweet everything, and we should not tell the world what's happening about using tweets or using the social networks. What do you think about that?
I think he's wrong.
Why do you think?
Yeah. There's so many different ways of communicating and telling stories. I mean, I find Twitter very useful. I don't tweet myself that often. I do sometimes, but I use Twitter a lot to find out about interesting things that are happening. I mean, it's like Facebook. I hate Facebook. I love Facebook. I mean, it's.
And you think that, for example, a lot of histories that the journalist is very emotional, very contact work. that with that type of programs, everything very visual, very magic, but is everything online. Maybe the more standard work of the journalists or being there we are losing this type of style, to call it that way.
Yeah. I don't know, actually, but I think that people are very complicated. I always thought that even the idea of sections in a newspaper was very strange because, I love art, but I also love international news, and I think it's quite possible to be somebody who tweets and also loves books, or who loves videos but also loves painting. I mean, why? People are complicated.
So, don't you think that make a tweet about something could lose the something about the story, or some people that are against about the story or about the fact?
Yeah.
Most people that are against the Twitter said that that short, long of the message could make the fact lose something. Don't you think about?
Well, I think it's true, but I think that people know. I mean, when you see something on Twitter, you don't think this is a full story. You think this is 140 characters, right? So I think there's a danger, but I also think it's not a big danger. And on the other hand, most of what I look at on Twitter are actually links to other things, so it's actually taking me deeper into stories sometimes rather than... Is that true for you also? I mean, sometimes I just see very quickly, what people say, but sometimes they're saying, look at this, it's amazing, and so it's very useful for that. So.
Maybe, don't you think that interacting so much with the readers or clients or whatever changes what the idea of a journalist is? Because maybe now they're at the same level what a reader is and what a journalist is, because you can interact in both parts. So what do you think about that?
That's a very good question. We never used to know what readers thought about our stories, but now I know exactly how many people look at any infographic that we make or any story that we write. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's a little bit dangerous because you can start to do things that are more popular. But I feel that one of our jobs is to tell people something they don't know. And so you have to surprise people. When I go to a magazine or a website or a newspaper, I want to be surprised a little bit. So that changes. That's our job a little bit, is to tell people something they don't know.
About that, and I think that we will final with this, no? We'd like to know that some people said with this kind of journalism we are getting in a subjective journalism. I think that were you that said that the author gets known, and as the readers interact with the author. Don't you think that we are losing the fact instead of the opinion of the author?
Well, journalism is very different in the United States than it is in Europe, and it's very, very... we're very suspicious of putting opinion into our stories. So there is no... Like the Boston Globe, there is no political party that the Boston Globe is associated with. So it's a little bit different there, I think. So.
Well, thank you very much.